everyone. I'm Dana Perino along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Brian Kilmeade. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The 5. Well, we've read the GOP memo alleging surveillance abuses by the DOJ and FBI investigating the Trump campaign. Will the president also declassify the Democratic rebuttal? We are awaiting a decision from the White House.
The president has seen the memo. He met with the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, within the last hour to discuss some of the differences between the two memos. And we are undergoing the exact same process that we did with the previous memo, in which it will go through a full and thorough legal and national security review. We're in the middle of that process. When that's completed, the president will be given a thorough briefing on the findings of the different organizations and stakeholders that are involved, and we'll make a determination at that time.
Democrats say they want it released as quickly as possible, but they're also voicing some concerns.
What I'm more concerned about, Allison, is that they make political redactions. That is, not redactions to protect sources or methods, which we've asked the Department of Justice and FBI to do, but redactions to remove information they think is unfavorable to the president. That could be a real problem, and that's our main concern at this point. Okay. But it will certainly appear that the White House is trying to stonewall again if, in fact, they make these political redactions that we fear.
There's a theory it could be a trap for the president. A source tells Fox News the rebuttal is filled with sensitive details intentionally to pressure the White House to either block it or significantly redact it. So I guess that is a ploy that someone could use, Kimberly, if they wanted to make a big deal out of it.
Of course, right? It's like made for TV moment. If he redacts anything, oh, the least transparent president in the country's ever seen. Adam Schiff will run to the podium. Will probably like pull a leg muscle trying to get there in time to be like, look at this, and like show it all redacted. So it's a made for TV moment. And that's what they're hoping for, to say, listen, it's so bad and damaging. Look at the president wants to keep all of this out, to keep it from the American people. He only wants to release what's favorable to him. He did this as an attempt to distract. That's the argument of what they'll say. So there is a little bit of, a risk in it, but you can't release one really and not release the other.
The Democrats really thought, Juan, that the Republican memo was a flop. They basically said, and Judge Napolitano said, they overpromised and underdelivered. Do the Democrats risk the same?
Oh, yes, if they're unable to make the case. The problem here is, and I think Kimberly actually said it should be released in the name of transparency, which was the argument last week about releasing the Devin Nunes memo. The only problem there was, of course, that there was so much classified information not attached, and so it's hard to fully gauge whether or not they're making a serious case, or it's just about discrediting the FBI, the Department of Justice, and undermining the Mueller investigation. In this case, you also have questions about classified information that's attached. And the issue for me is, once you agree to let out the Republican memo, how can you not let out the Democrats' response? And the only issue here, it seems, is whether or not President Trump, feeling that he's being intentionally lured into a trap, decides, no, I'm not going to do it, and doesn't give a hoot about what anybody has to say, even though he's the one, by the way, who put on the dog and pony show, who started this.
Well, my sense, Jesse, is that the White House will release it, as long as it doesn't compromise sources and methods. And maybe if there is some sort of a trap in there, they might try to go back to the Democrats and say, you need to fix this. But my sense is they're going to release it. What do you think?
They will. The Democrats are running scared. They're afraid of the truth. They know the truth's not on their side.
Scared of what?
CNN, well, they're scared of this FISA memo that came out last week. They're saying it's not a big deal because they know it's a big deal, because they can't address the facts on the merit. I don't trust Schiff. He's a proven liar and a leaker. Remember, he leaked the Don Jr. testimony that blew up in his face when he got the date wrong. And then he said this Nunes memo was going to jeopardize national security. It was going to compromise methods, and it was going to be tampered with. All of those things were not true. So he's trying to trap the president into redacting something to make him look like an obstructor. Who knows what the president's going to do? He's going to side on the side of national security. They know they have to play games because they can't address the abuse that they undertook at their own Justice Department and FBI. Now, the real collusion is with Hillary and the Russians. She was one that paid for an agent to go to Russia. She was the one that paid for fake Russian dirt, and she was the one that paid for the wiretap on the Trump campaign. Comey better lawyer up, because Comey knew that it was unverified and salacious. Comey testified to the Senate that it was unverified and salacious, yet he was the one that brought this unverified and salacious document to the FISA judge. That is against the law. You cannot present unverified information to a FISA judge. So he's in big trouble. Also, why did he deliver this unverified document to President-elect Trump when he knew Hillary paid for it, but didn't tell the president-elect that Hillary paid for it? And then the day after he briefed the president on the dossier, it leaks. Very suspicious. He should maybe stop writing his book and lawyer up.
You know, if I was a judge, I'd say, excuse me, lawyer, counselor, there was no relevance to anything you said to this case.
Yeah? Point to one thing that I said that was incorrect.
I think you said that because Steele's dossier may have been paid for by the Clinton campaign, it should have been ignored. So if the information is legitimate,
unverified, so you don't take unverified information to a FISA judge.
You don't know that it's unverified. We don't know.
Comey said it was unverified.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
Hold
the tape.
He said he is checking. He's checking. They have not.
He better lawyer up.
Yeah, boy, you better lawyer up.
Comey said it was unverified and salacious.
The Democrats are a bunch of criminals. Is that right?
And what is on the dossier that has been verified, Juan? Because our own brain room says they couldn't corroborate anything.
Oh, my God.
So are you going to go against your own company on this?
I'll go against
Comey?
you.
So you don't trust Comey and Fox News?
It's me. It's me. Even Kimberly agrees. But I must say, you're out there, buddy. You are.
I'm out there on the side of the truth.
There. Oh, yeah, the
This
truth.
whole hoax is imploding, and you're just trying to cover it up.
Oh, for sure.
Not sure he's helping.
Right.
Dana, I just think you point to anything that I said that was wrong.
Fox and Friends and the Kilmeade radio show. Good to have you here.
There's a giant Donald Trump looming over your shoulder, and you're pretending like it doesn't
This
matter.
coming from Fox. That's rich.
Yeah.
So here we go. Are you ready?
I don't know what to
I'd
say.
like to back.
Just throwing shade on water.
This is who's going to help heal this show. And it's going to take a lot.
Okay.
I like to back the New York Times effort to release the transcripts of the petitions put in front of the FISA court, and we'll know once and for all, for the first time since this court was created in 1978, what really went on in order to win over that judge. And I had to refresh my memory on this because it's always around terror cases up until President Trump was elected. And as you know, Kimberly, the judge sits there by himself. There's no counter-argument or defense attorney. They just go, FBI says, could you take a look at this? I'd like a warrant. And there's no pushback.
It's a little more difficult than that.
But it just to be blatant, I like a warrant. And they said, okay, we'll take a look at this. And you know what? Judging by everything I see here, out of 35,000 times, I'm only going to reject 12. This won't be one of the 12. So it's rubber stamped and it's put forward. So there's two things that's going to be very interesting to find out in this 10-page memo. Number one, they say they're going to put in context Andrew McCabe's statement when he came out and said we would not have gotten this FISA warrant without the dossier. They said it's taken out of context, but the quote's accurate. So I can't wait to see how they put that in context. I guess it was through laughter or something. I'm not sure. The second thing is the footnote at the bottom of the page that said it was a political organization that paid for the dossier, where it didn't say Hillary for America or Democratic National Committee or anything. We know that would have been a blatant way to say who paid for the dossier that might have changed the judge's mind.
Do we
But
know
this
that the judges didn't ask who it was?
We don't know because we don't have the transcripts, the manuscript,
do
whatever you
know
call
that
it.
they said it
That's
was
why we need
political.
to see it. If I'm a judge, the follow-up question would be, by the way, well, what's the name of this organization that gave you this dossier?
What does it matter?
It's very similar.
Oh.
One, if you're coming at me and I'm saying, why is this guy mad at me? Well, it turns out my enemy is screaming, telling you bad things about me before I got here. That means you're dispossessed to hate me. So these people were paid. The dossier had a political motive to what they call facts. The political motive is get Hillary elected. The person that got it said, I will do whatever I can to make sure Donald Trump is not elected. There's nothing I said that was inaccurate there. So let's see the argument. Let's see the transcripts.
Well, the first thing I would say to you is, one, there were FISA requests on Carter Page way before Donald Trump.
2013 for one incident.
No,
he was a professor at NYU.
Hang on, slow down. And then subsequently there were requests. And again, they had to be approved, especially in the last case, as we know, by Rod Rosenstein, who is a Trump.
I'll accept your argument. Then why do you need the dossier?
What?
Why do you need the dossier?
Because guess what?
All
There
five
had
times
been-
you need the dossier.
What?
All 5 times you needed this
Not
dossier.
5 times. The dossier doesn't exist until late 2016.
No,
4 times.
to get the
4.
petition forward.
But you have
need to
in-
turn around
but
and say
in order
this
to
is.
get it approved for another time, you have to prove that there is still a need to
Correct.
be following
For it to
somebody.
be
So they had to
ongoing.
provide additional evidence to that. And I'm not necessarily, for one, thinking that we need to open up all. This is just to me a real slippery slope to open up all of law enforcement to crowdsourcing by people like us. Like, I'm not qualified.
Yeah,
Well,
because it undermines our ability
Because
to
it
do
doesn't
their
involve
job
us.
as well,
If it was
but-
involved me, if I'm Carter, I'd like everything I can. I'm the most important person in the world. If I'm someone surveilling me because of a petition put in front of the FISA court, I'd like to
You
find
want
out
to
the
listen to Carter
transcript.
Page? Here he is from this morning. Take a look.
These are your words. I served as an informal advisor to the staff of the Kremlin. You're advising the Kremlin.
There was a lot of people advising. We were part of an informal group, and meeting in Geneva, Paris. We had a meeting in the New York Stock Exchange. The first meeting was in the New York Stock Exchange. What I've seen thus far is just complete ridiculousness.
You've been under surveillance from the court since October 2016. Since that time, have you ever spoken to Donald Trump?
I never spoke with him since. I never spoke with him any time in my life.
You've never spoken to Donald Trump in your life?
Nope.
No email, no text, nothing like that?
Never.
So there you have it, Jesse. He's never even talked to the
But
president.
yet he threw the election for Trump. How did
Yeah,
he do
right.
both? How did he get
This
Donald Trump
guy's
elected?
not the
Magic
sharpest
man.
knife in the drawer, but I will say this. They just released some documents from 2015 from the Justice Department that said Carter Page actually helped the FBI put away Russian spies
spies,
and
yeah.
expose them that were infiltrating our systems in the United States. So either he's a double agent, which he's not clearly,
Triple. He might be a
because he's, I don't
a
think he's
reverse-
that smart to play both
reverse
sides.
spiral.
Or why would the Russians recruit him again after he helped put Russian spies away a few years ago?
'Cause no one
it
would
doesn't make
suspect it.
sense, and he's an informal, unpaid advisor to the Trump campaign. It just doesn't add up why you'd open up an investigation on
It's
this
so
guy.
clear that Papadopoulos and he threw the election for Trump. Why can't you see that? It's so obvious. A guy he never talked to or texted before threw the election and stopped Hillary Clinton from being the first
Well,
female
the president doesn't text.
Yeah, thank God.
All right, I think we've beaten this
tweet-
memo to
tweet
death
today.
for today. We'll find out tomorrow if there's going to be the Democratic memo to be reviewed and picked apart as the GOP one has been. Until then, could there be another government shutdown? Come on, teleprompter. There we go. Over immigration, the president addressed that today. Next.
I get to see that side of her that no one knows but me. She's one of a kind. It's a 1 in a million chance that I would find her hand in mine. It's crazy. I'm the lucky.
I don't need you to say something, baby. Say something, baby. Say something, baby.
Yes, aggressive, right? Making our borders safe again, always on the mind of President Trump. And today he hosted a roundtable with law enforcement officials on the threat of MS-13 and how to close the immigration loopholes that have allowed gang members to enter our country.
These incredible professionals at the table cannot do their job unless we change really the legislation, and we're going to get it done. Frankly, I'll go a step further. If we don't change the legislation, if we don't get rid of these loopholes where killers are allowed to come into our country and continue to kill, if we don't change it, let's have a shutdown. We'll do a shutdown, and it's worth it for our country.
Loopholes allowed a twice-deported illegal immigrant back into the country who's now suspected of killing 2 people over the weekend, including Indianapolis Colts player Edwin Jackson. The president calls it disgraceful. One of many such preventable tragedies. We must get the Dems to get tough on the border and with illegal immigration fast. Okay, Brian, so this is an issue that he campaigned heavily on and something that the president's very passionate about.
Right.
And you see yet another example of someone who should not be in the country, that is somebody who's a criminal recidivist and then takes 2 lives.
And he tweeted on it this morning,
Yes.
right after we discussed it. And we had a couple experts on it. He went out, the details of he's on the side of the road. He got sick with an Uber car. And then this guy with a .2, I think 3 times the legal limit, runs over him and kills him and the Uber driver. Turns out he's a 26-year-old linebacker from Indianapolis. And even the vice president of the United States talked about it. But I think, I don't want to see these tragedies made into bigger stories. It's just an example. But here's the problem. I think fundamentally everyone's getting hung up on the fact that it says just shut down. He's angry. He just left the MS-13 conversation. He feels as though it's still being ignored. We're going too slow in cracking down on it. Number 2, he sees this McCain-Coons bipartisan agreement? The bipartisan agreement is, let's give the Democrats the DACA agreement and let's do nothing on the border. We will study it. It's a big border that's wide open. It's terrible.
Terrible.
Well, I was thinking just when I watched this today that he is utilizing the bully pulpit in the most effective way. He's actually quite a fearsome communicator if you're on the other side. So he's constantly able to take headlines of the day and social media and then drive a message on one of his preferred policies. And on this one, when you have a story like out of Indiana, combined with the one that we all know about Kate Steinle, that's still fresh in our minds, then passions run hot for his supporters, and it ratchets up the pressure on people like a Senator Joe Manchin or a Claire McCaskill or Senator Donnelly of Indiana, because those are red states with blue senators, and they're up for re-election. And this issue does drive people to vote with their passion. I'm not saying that means that Republicans are going to win necessarily, but it does make it harder for them in particular.
Jess.
I don't think the Democrats want a real immigration deal. They want to run on Republicans hate Hispanics. They think they can get away with it because they know the media is going to cover for them. They're way out of the mainstream on immigration. Trump's offering them something very generous, 1.8 million amnesty in exchange for a border wall that they all voted for in 2006. Harvard study says nearly 70% of the Americans support the DACA deal in exchange for border wall and merit-based immigration system. They don't want to play. That's fine. We'll shut the government down. They'll shoot themselves in the foot twice. They did it before. They'll probably do it again. Trump's going to stare them down, and they're going to blink. On this other case in Indiana, horrible situation. Where's Black Lives Matter? You have a black athlete, great career ahead of him, gets killed by a twice-deported illegal alien. I haven't heard a word from Black Lives Matter. What's that all about? Shows the border's not secure. We got to secure the border. If you have a house, you keep getting the house broken into, maybe get an alarm system.
I didn't know. Is the immigrant a cop?
Right.
No, Juan, but if it was a white cop that killed a black guy,
I see.
Black Lives Matter,
So
be out on the street.
it wasn't someone who had the authority of the state and a weapon. Oh, it was an illegal immigrant.
It was a preventable tragedy.
This is another example of the kind of fraud that President Trump and his acolytes are throwing out there to distract people. First and foremost,
It's not
let me
a
just tell you
distraction,
something.
Juan, when someone
Most
dies.
Americans,
Yeah, I don't get
What, not a distraction?
How is it a
What is the
distraction?
death of the sad and tragic death of this football player
Because
have
the
to do with the
border's
immigration
not secure.
debate? It has nothing to do with
It
it.
has everything to do with it.
He could have been killed by an American who was a drunk driver.
But he
Of course he could have.
Okay.
Of course he could have.
Let me just say.
But that American didn't cross the border twice.
So what does that have to do?
Because the
Let me
border's
just
not
say,
secure.
The border is secure, but
Then
let me
how did he
just-
get back into the country twice,
Let me
Juan?
just tell you this, okay?
Did he fly?
Let's see if we can quiet Jesse's yelling and just look at some facts. That's all I'm asking you to do,
Okay,
my
go
brother.
ahead.
The fact is that what we know is that 2017 saw the lowest levels of border crossing in American history. Second fact that I want you to be realizing is that between 2005 and 2017, we went from 135 miles of border barriers to 635 miles. And one final point, and this is where I disagree with Dana about what an effective communicator is. All he does is throw up dust. It's like 65% of Americans oppose building this wall, see it as superfluous, redundant, a waste of money at a time when we have huge deficits.
Well, I don't know where that last number came from.
Yeah, it's
but,
ABC
well, I would
News.
say number one, I think border security is of extreme importance in America. Number
Yes.
two, after being on the border and talking to our new Homeland Security Secretary, she says those numbers when he first took over went down because they thought the crackdown was coming. When it didn't come, they started picking up again.
Yep.
And it's something that President Trump doesn't like to talk about because he wanted to think the law and order president's the new sheriff in town. But they, on the other side, are smart. They're looking at legislation. What are we actually doing? So there's an urgency here. To me, this is so easy a deal. It could be the first time in 20 years we got legitimate improvement on the
So true.
border and immigration in general. They want this. The country wants this. And they want border security. Work it out. And you can't say he's just winging it. He actually gave a plan. He said, here's my 4 things I want. Can you start talking about it at least? But this last plan, this McCain-Coons plan, is an insult to anyone who wants to see something done.
I don't think so. I think what you have is an opportunity here for people to finally work together. Let's get an immigration reform package passed.
Study the border is an answer? Study the border?
The border.
Coons wants to
Let's make
study the
sure-
border.
Let's
and
make
come up with a
sure we don't-
report.
Let's
I need
make
another
sure
report.
we're not just responding to rhetoric. Let's
Reports
make sure
about
we're
reports.
responding to the actual issues on the border.
You know there's great studies on this stuff.
Well, let's go for it. But
Well,
I just think
and
Trump
now
is
there's
sitting
the
on his
will and the
wall like he's
wherewithal to
Humpty
get it.
Dumpty.
No,
Humpty
no,
Dumpty's going to have
no.
a fall.
I don't think so, Juan.
I think so.
Liberals take the bait again. President Trump makes a joke about treason, and Democrats go wild. Next.
Coldest story ever told. Somewhere far along this road, he lost his soul to a woman so heartless.
There's not a thing President Trump can say that doesn't set off the hypersensitive left. As you may remember, Democrats were stone-faced at his State of the Union address, and he had some fun mocking them to a crowd yesterday.
You're up there. You've got half the room going totally crazy, wild. They loved everything. They want to do something great for our country. And you have the other side, even on positive news, really positive news like that, they were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not? You know, can we call that treason? Why not? I mean, they certainly didn't seem to love our country very much.
Of course, the liberal media heard the word treason and went berserk.
It is outrageous, and we shouldn't get numb to it by saying that's just Trump being Trump. Words have meanings. Treason is the most serious civic sin there is. It is a crime. And to say all of a sudden that Democrats, the political opposition, is treasonous for the crime of not applauding you during a State of the Union is just nuts.
This incredible insecurity, I just don't think is good for the office.
In every State of the Union address, half of the Congress spends most of their time applauding, and the other half spends most of their time refusing to applaud. And no president in history has ever been so ignorant or reckless or demented as to call that treasonous.
Guys, settle down. The White House points out the obvious. It was a joke.
The president was clearly joking with his comments, but what isn't a joke is that Democrats refuse to celebrate the accomplishments of last year that has helped all Americans. What I don't understand and what I don't think the country understands is why Democrats are so upset about lower taxes and higher wages. That's something that every American should be celebrating, not crying about, not sitting on their hands for.
What do you think, Dana?
Well, I think some jokes fall flat, and the treason one probably is one of those I would make. Maybe I wouldn't have said it. I like it when he does things
Doesn't
like
qualify Dana's corny
like when he
jokes.
says, "They didn't stand for me. They look so grumpy, but that's okay. Like maybe they'll come around." Like I like it when he does something like that because it looks like he is actually trying to advance the ball. Who cares that they didn't stand up? Republicans didn't stand up for Obama. I actually think that for the media, though, in covering it incessantly, it just kind of makes this point that it's ridiculous. You know, there are so many big issues. Like one of them I couldn't even get to today on the 2 o'clock show. You know, Syria's Assad has been using chlorine gas against his own people. And we have a big decision to make in this country. Like, what are we going to? Are we going to stand for that?
No.
And there's so many issues. There's so many issues here in the country, et cetera, that wasted a lot of time this morning talking about that.
Okay, so Dana did not like the joke and wouldn't have said it. Brian definitely would have made that joke, I know.
He cares more about the audience in front of him, like almost like stand-up comedians opposed to movie actors. He doesn't care what the audience at the box office is. He cares about the crew. He cares about the audience, like the audience behind you. So he's just looking to get the most out of them. We've seen his live events before. He exaggerates. It's part of putting on an outstanding show, which gets him big ratings and big crowds. That's why it's not just a political rally to see him. You never know what he's going to say. But I was able to see other politicians that we know who have said things very similar, like Joe Biden says of Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. They bet against America all the time, like Paul Krugman, that famed economist. The GOP opposing global warming legislation is treasonous. David Plouffe, who got President Obama elected twice, says House GOP committing acts of treason by shutting the government down. This has been a common phrase. No one went crazy about that.
Not only that, they've been accusing Trump of being a traitor.
Oh,
for colluding with Russia, which they haven't even proven for the last year.
Yes.
And that wasn't tongue-in-cheek.
No, well, they're just, they're hypocritical in that sense. It's like hypocritical hyperbole. Okay, they can use it, but they don't like it when it's used against them. Obviously, the president was making a joke, sort of like tongue-in-cheek. And guess what else? The president is used to people applauding and liking what he has to say because he did all those rallies and he worked so hard
telling
during
him to
the
get up
campaign.
during the State of the Union.
That's funny. Now, that was funny.
It's real.
Yeah, but that's what he's used to. He's used to getting the big response and like winning in the room and everybody loving. It's like this State of the Union thing. I mean, half this audience.
He might
is
not do
done.
it next year.
Democrats a little sensitive, Juan, about being called traitorous. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't think the Wall Street Journal editorial page is exactly the home of liberal Democrats, but I saw that one of their editorials today said that the president was way over the line in calling people treasonous, and that what he's doing is he is making his political opponents into devils for his supporters. And that's just not good for a real, honest debate in our country. It's just not good that you would demonize your opposition in this way.
No one ever
But Tammy
demonizes
Duckworth,
Republicans.
Like Lawrence
Juan.
O'Donnell, who
please,
just called them
legitimately
demented?
is when they demonize you
Oh,
guys.
really?
But let me just say, Tammy Duckworth had the best response. The senator from Illinois, who's a double amputee from war wounds, reminded people of exactly who this president is when she said, guess who had deferments for bone spurs to get out of Vietnam?
Bill Clinton.
I
I'm not
see.
fighting in Vietnam. That was an evil war.
Oh, I
And
see.
now it's-
Anything to defend
Everybody
Trump.
should go.
Is there
versus-
any limit? Is there
No,
any
I
limit?
would just say the party that kneels during the anthem one.
Oh, I
You're
see.
going to be upset about when people call you a traitor?
A traitor for kneeling during...
You guys kneel during the anthem. You call our troops Nazis. You root against
What?
America all the time.
Who is that?
Dick Durbin.
Who is
You
that?
don't remember Dick Durbin, Senator Illinois, compared the U.S. soldiers to Nazis
I
during the
missed
Iraq
that one.
War.
I missed that one.
Yeah, well, I can pull it up for you on
Thank
Google.
you. All right.
If you're like me and plan to take your daughter to the school's father-daughter dance, you may be out of luck due to crazy new gender rules. Next.
Oh my, is this another case of political correctness gone crazy? I'm a dad, and this one's hard for me to wrap my head around. An elementary school in New York has canceled its annual father-daughter dance over new gender guidelines issued by the state of New York. One official claims that excluding any gender can be, quote, uncomfortable and triggering for some people.
Oh, jeez.
The school's facing a backlash for the decision.
So-
What do you say, Jesse?
Well, I have a father-daughter dance this Friday. The only thing that's going to be uncomfortable are going to be my dance moves. I think it's going to be fine. No one's going to have a problem with it. You don't ruin a dance for 200 people because one person with two moms might be upset. It's the tyranny of the minority. It's what happens when radicals are in charge. De Blasio's now anti-cop, anti-family. He's pro-illegal and pro-homeless, but he gets elected in New York. It doesn't make sense to me. If you take this to the extreme, I mean, what's going to happen when you play with these gender roles? You're going to have boys playing on the field hockey team. Everyone's showering together. It's total chaos. Everyone's just, this is what happens when
Men do
political
play field hockey in
correctness-
Europe.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not America. Look what happened to Europe. The continent's a mess.
Right, absolutely.
You hear
Brexnet.
this? It's like so nuts.
Well, the only thing I would change about this, wait, I should wait to be called on. Juan, is it okay?
Go, baby.
All right. The only thing I would change about this, I have two daughters. I've been to all the father-daughter dances, and it's great. I do feel bad for kids who don't have, or dad's not around, not married, passed away.
Yep.
It becomes awkward. You
Overseas?
Overseas. You bring two girls there because their mom doesn't want them to be left out. I do find that. I do sometimes think it could be parent-daughter dance, but not to be gender weary,
You can
just
make
to
an
be
exception
somewhat
for
have
that.
exception. But I noticed in this Staten Island school, they do have mother-son bowling night, so that's allowed. The father-daughter is the problem.
Well, so according to this, what it says here is that transgender and gender nonconforming student guidelines really want that there be some clear purpose to the gender definition. So, for example, what you're talking about, they say if you have the daughter has a best friend or a best guy in her life, it doesn't have to be a dad, and the dad's absent or whatever, that person can join in. What do you think, Dana?
Well, I think that that's great. Remember we did that story about the mentoring event in Dallas where they were worried that there weren't enough dads, and then they ended up with 500 extra men from the community who wanted to pitch in. So I think that you could get around this if you wanted to. I think that, yes, I agree with Jesse. It's getting a little over the top. I ask though, Kimberly, have you ever been to a mother-son dance with Ronan? Because
Mother-son bowling?
You'd be a hit.
Can I cut in?
I would. Everyone be themselves. Just let it all hang out. I have not been to one, although Ronan has a school dance this weekend. Anyway, who knows?
Are you going?
Little Justin Bieber. No. He
doesn't want you to?
No, they said they don't want the parents there and just being weird and uncool. So it's just, I don't know.
It's a unique experience.
Yeah, well, I used to love the father-daughter dance. I mean, we killed it. Me and my dad, Tony G in the house. It was like unbelievable. I
Get a
was
routine?
spinning, doing. Oh my God, it was phenomenal. I was like, here we go. This
It's hard
is
to
our
imagine.
moment.
I can't imagine
Yeah,
that.
it was so much
It
fun.
doesn't seem like you'd like
No,
attention.
she does, and she knows that. Did he teach her to
But then he's a phenomenal dancer, but so was my mom. But also then all the teachers were cutting in to dance with my dad. It was so bizarre. It was like a weird, audition to become.
Pretty soon we're all
my
just going to have to sit at home and do nothing.
Well, I don't
Right.
think that.
Exactly.
Exactly. Cancel everything.
I don't think that, but I do think that they have gone overboard here. I mean, clearly this is about bonding and affirmation for young women and knowing that dad cares and dad was going to go out with you.
Yeah.
This is not about Stacey's mom, Jesse.
Oh,
Right.
Thanks for clearing that up.
But I mean, the
But
thing
so
is,
I
wait,
don't
can
get
you
it.
have any tradition? Can you at least say, I remember Kimberly had her memory, but the next generation is not going to have those
Well,
memories.
no. You can have the memory, but they
we do.
want you to open it up so that, for example, a
it doesn't
transgender
matter.
child
Yeah.
could attend.
Yeah, but you
Well,
can
they
make
can bring an
these
uncle or a
you can make these
grandfather or
exceptions.
Yes,
something
that's what
like
I
that.
think,
Well,
right.
then why don't they do that?
Well,
But you
I
can
think
do
that's what
that,
they're gonna
Juan.
do.
You've got to make it. You can't be like, okay, because one person, then whatever. Listen, God bless. May find a way, make an exception, and do it. And it's really important. And you'll see there's so many studies on this, of the relationship between daughters and fathers, and how important it is for the development, of women, for their self-esteem, how they view themselves, their relationships with the opposite sex. So I think we need to leave this.
But
one
I
in
think they're
place.
going to your point, they're going to now try to schedule it in such a way that everyone can feel that they're included and it can be for everyone. So I don't have any objection to that, but I don't like the idea that you would cancel it. That, to me, is beyond offensive.
We're going to veto that.
More gender
Come on,
drama
Staten Island.
ahead. A woman gets a correction on her use of language from the beautiful Prime Minister of Canada.
All right, last week, Canada, which is right near us, made its national anthem gender neutral.
Smartest show on TV.
Thank you. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, whose dad used to run that country, was on a mission to get his fellow countrymen, country persons, on board with the PC lingo. I'm not kidding. Watch this.
So that's why we came here today to ask you to also look into the policies that religious charitable organizations have in our legislation so that it can also be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look into
we
that.
like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because
yeah.
it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Oh my God.
I think he was joking.
No, he's not.
He's not joking.
No, he's not.
He's not
But
joking.
he's not saying it tongue in cheek.
That's it. But he didn't get elected. He didn't get elected joking about gender identity. Canada passed Bill C-16. You know what that means?
I do.
Which
C for
means
Canada.
gender identity and gender expression into both of the country's human rights code. It's a hate crime to say anything but, I guess, person kind. Juan, do you buy into this? Are you saying he's singing my song?
Has this gone too far even for you, Juan?
No, I don't understand, but I must say I'm all about, being inclusive. So I like that idea, but I didn't understand this. I've often thought about a word like history. I think it's his story.
You're not one of those, Juan.
No, but I just think
never thought of that.
I just think it's the way that we, in terms of gender roles and identities, men have dominated. I don't have any, but I think he's gone a little much. I was
Thank
curious.
you. Gone a little much.
Okay. Yeah,
I
but
think
I
it's
was
ticking
curious.
people off.
No, obviously not. I was going to point out that the audience applauded.
Well, yeah, it's a bunch of college students.
Yeah,
Juan.
because she was there talking about how it needed to go the other way. I do think that he was a little bit joking. I don't know. Is it?
Dana, I
No,
didn't
Dana.
see any account that said he
Misread
was
it.
joking.
Ask Peter. See,
Right.
check your phone.
Right. Or, you know what? Ask Siri. Siri knows. But
Siri
with
knows.
Kimberly, this is something I'm all for being open. But I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
I've had somebody I know quite well in a sports class say, someone put up their hand and say, stop saying first baseman is first base person.
No way.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well,
That's
an
where we're
extra
going.
syllable. It's
That's
very
where we're
annoying.
going.
so crazy. I think this is just too much. He's not working for me. I'm not feeling it. Are you, Jesse?
Wait a minute.
Too
No.
much.
This is why we need the wall on the northern
Wait,
border.
you thought what?
I thought he was so dreamy and beautiful.
Not to me anymore.
But he's like the kind of guy that pretends to be politically correct just to get girls. Like, you know, he really buys
Have you
it.
done that,
He's
Jesse?
like kind of like good looking.
Wait a minute.
And
Is that what's going on
I
here?
think that might be a little bit.
Are you getting
to do
girls with
it.
this act?
No, but I know guys that play that card to get girls.
That's so funny.
You just called him a
And they all live in LA.
Jordan Peterson, who's his bitter social enemy, says the tyrannical bill, which he passed right away, is nothing but social engineering to the nth degree and all in the name of political correctness. I think there's
He agrees
beginning to
with
be
Jesse.
blowback in Canada, and I think it's coming here.
Well, I love
I think
Jordan.
that's why the father-daughter
I love
dance
Jordan
is
Peterson.
banned.
It's
Because
just
of
a-
those guys up north.
Yeah, I love Jordan Peterson, and I think he makes a lot of good points. So maybe Justin Trudeau wasn't joking.
See, Dana,
Yeah, thank you.
trust me on this
Full-
one.
like a Seinfeld
Well, I
episode.
was-
Full circle.
But you know, when you're a
Changed your mind.
spokesman, you could be a spokesperson, but a spokesman, it never bothered me to be called a spokesman.
Nobody in the audience
Right.
even heard of that. No one uses that term. It's
And they just said, you know, should